She asks the girl in front of her if she is Rose Valentine. Rose stands there nervously with her hands clasped and confirms that, yes, that is right. Emma introduces herself as a counselor for the committee and asks what brings Rose to the room today. Rose grips her dress tightly and admits that actually, there is a frail woman in the center who is currently being threatened by a truly heinous man. Rose starts crying dramatically, begging the counselor to save this poor and fragile victim because everything depends on her. Emma is shocked that something like that would happen in the center and asks who the victim is. Rose slams her hands on the desk and shouts that it is her. She explains she has been enduring harsh treatment for the past few weeks without missing a single day. Rose continues her rant, describing the humiliation she has faced from a man far bigger and stronger than her who gives her nothing but neglect and ridicule. She says her self-esteem has hit rock bottom and she wants to see his arrogant face utterly crushed. Suddenly, a dark figure looms behind her and a voice calls out her name. Rose gasps, recognizing that voice immediately. The man entering the room is Claude Dunhart, the primary antagonist. He tells Rose he has been looking for her for a long time. Rose is terrified, wondering how he even knew she was here. Claude looks down at her and says he was worried when she suddenly disappeared from his sight. Claude asks Rose if she has already forgotten the promise they made. Rose can tell he is absolutely furious and tries to stammer out his name, but she is clearly cornered. Claude leans in close to her face and warns that if she does anything foolish, he will perform the marking immediately. He whispers in her ear, asking if she wants to do it right now. Rose is completely shocked because she knows exactly what marking entails. In this world, marking means going all the way with someone, which connects them as lifelong partners who can never be separated. Rose realizes that if this happens, she can never escape from him. She thinks that is absolutely impossible and tries to calm herself down, awkwardly lying that she only came here to talk about a friend. Claude is not buying it and tells her she is only making excuses even at this very moment. He says he has been holding back until now, but there is no need to do that anymore. Rose screams no and turns to Emma, desperately asking the counselor to believe her. She prays for God to save her from this man. Claude grabs Rose by the chin and forces her to look at him, telling her not to look away and to focus only on him. Rose realizes that this man is the main villain of this entire world. Rose confirms that he is the most ruthless villain character from the game she used to play. She is now trapped inside a dating simulation called Arteon's Savior Guide, where the heroine, Irene, tries to gain the affection of various male leads. To fight these mutants, the world relies on powerful individuals called espers and the commanders who lead them into battle. We see espers using elemental magic like ice and water, while Irene uses her own light magic to combat the monsters. Guides also exist to support the espers, creating a setting known as a guide bus. Before she transmigrated, the girl playing the game thought the protagonist's role was vital and admired Irene's pretty character design. She also noted the importance of the Protection Supervision Center, which manages nearly all espers and guides. She noticed there are also non-powered administrative clerks who handle the paperwork. At the time, she thought the game seemed simple since she just had to manifest Irene as a guide and match her with a powerful esper for a happy ending. In her first attempt at the game, Irene became a guide and tried to get along with a kind S-rank esper, but she died trying to stop the villain from going berserk. In the second attempt, she tried to work with a red-haired esper who did not care about the world. When she begged him for help during the villain's rampage, he just said no, even after she threatened him with jail time. That attempt ended with her dying after being forced into an emergency assembly. In the third take, she tried to stop another S-rank esper by literally grabbing his leg. He actually reached out and said he wanted to protect her, making it seem like she finally succeeded in staying near a powerful ally. But even then, she died because she was caught in a nearby rampage. The esper ended up with a funeral portrait, and the girl realized the game was completely insane. Every time she thought she was close to a happy ending, the world's villain would show up and mess everything up. The villain was particularly mysterious because he had no character illustration in the game, only a description. His image was only unlocked after reaching a specific ending, so nobody knew what he really looked like. She checked the online community to see if anyone had a strategy to defeat him, but everyone was just swearing and complaining that the villain was impossible to beat. Rose decides she wants to see the ending of the game. She figures the villain only goes berserk because he has not been properly guided. So if someone guides him well, the rampage will stop. She plans to match the heroine with the villain, assuming the heroine can handle him. Irene Magnolia reaches out with a tender gaze, offering her strength to guide the villain. Just as she is about to make contact, the game suddenly lags, leaving Rose staring at her phone in confusion. A system message pops up for Claude Dunhart. It explains that because he is a terrible germaphobe, he could not handle the guiding contact and broke her neck, killing her instantly. Rose falls back on the stairs screaming, questioning why germophobia is even a setting. Rose concludes that no matter what she does, the game ends badly because the villain is trash to avoid. She glares at her screen, calling Claude an awful bastard. Suddenly the scene shifts and Claude himself asks what she just said. Claude looks at Rose and asks if she called him. She smiles nervously and says no, while secretly thinking he is a filthy pervert. She realizes she has been possessed and brought into the world of Arteon, where the crazy Claude exists. Rose is now living as a non-powered office worker named Rose Valentine. She is just an extra character in this game world, far removed from the main plot she used to play. Rose reflects on her past life, where she was always worn out. Nothing at home ever improved, and her mother blamed her every single day, asking what sin she committed to give birth to someone like her. Her self-esteem was completely crushed. Day after day, she felt like she had no place to breathe. Even the one game she enjoyed would not go her way, which hit her harder than usual. She wondered why she could not be happy somewhere, even if it was just in a game. She finds the final boss Creep the most annoying because he acts so high and mighty for a stupid game character. She was upset over the trivial game result when everything changed. Rose noticed a car rushing toward her at the very last second. Just like that, her life ended as her phone screen shattered, showing the Arteon logo one last time. Rose wakes up in a bed, gasping and wondering where she is. She remembers getting hit by a car and cannot believe she is still alive. She holds her head, trying to figure out what happened to her. She realizes she woke up inside the game world, looking in the mirror. She sees a totally different face and wonders if this is possession. She adjusts quickly because she had no regrets in her previous life and decides to see what she has to work with. Rose searches the entire house looking for any character info that might be useful. Unfortunately, after checking all the drawers, she finds absolutely nothing that can help her. From the scraps of memory left in the body, she learns her name is Rose Valentine. She is a guide who cannot actually control her guiding, which she finds incredibly weird since guides are normally able to guide through physical contact. Rose thinks being a background extra might actually work in her favor. Since she has no role tying her to the main cast, she can start a brand new life without being chained to the game's plot. She initially thinks this is a gift from God, but then she realizes the original Rose Valentine had literally no money. Faced with a cost of living crisis, she has to start job searching and writing resumes immediately just to survive. Before she knows it, Rose finally lands a job. She proudly looks at her new employee badge, excited that the position comes with a dorm room and free meals. She decides to rewrite her plan since the entrance test labeled her a normal civilian. Rose is relieved. She does not have to touch random people for guiding. She plans to keep her guide identity hidden until she finds a hot Esper with a good personality to imprint with. She imagines a peaceful life, though she notes there is one variable. That variable is Irene Magnolia, who stands in the doorway yelling at Rose to wipe the bathroom floor, so there's no water left after a shower. Rose can only offer a nervous apology as she deals with her high-maintenance roommate. Irene Magnolia yells that stepping in wet socks is the absolute worst and asks Rose Valentine how many times she has to tell her to wipe the floor with a towel. Rose stammers out an apology and promises to be more careful next time. She realizes that sharing a dorm with the game's heroine is not what she expected. When she first got assigned to share a room with Irene, she was amazed to see a character from the game in real life. During their first meeting, Irene introduced herself with a warm smile. Rose seriously thought she was standing before a goddess and begged the heroine to take good care of her. Seeing a character she only knew from a game felt surreal. However, once they started living together, things changed. Irene turns toward her with a sharp glare and calls out to her. Irene coldly asks how many times she has to tell her to be more careful. Rose can only offer another awkward apology. The heroine is so sensitive that it is exhausting just to match her mood. If Rose comes home even a little late or makes a tiny noise while she is reading, she gets a sharp glare. Rose cannot even tell if she is living with a heroine or a villain. Now Rose realizes she is the one suffering. She thinks that since Irene goes after the game's male leads, she probably does not have an average personality. Walking through the garden at night, Rose panics because she is much later than she thought. She knows if she goes in now, Irene will yell about where she was and why she is late. Standing in front of the dorm building, Rose decides she should not go in yet. She hates having to walk on eggshells every day. She decides to wait outside until Irene falls asleep. She holds her book, prepared to stay out in the garden. Rose starts feeling better than usual thanks to the cool breeze. Suddenly, she hears a rustling sound in the bushes. She stops and wonders what could be making that noise at such a late hour. Rose looks around nervously and wonders if it could be a mutant. She realizes she is the only one around, which makes the situation even scarier. A hand grabs a tree as a man stumbles forward. Rose is shocked but relieved to see it is a person rather than a monster. She figures he might be rushing back because of the curfew just like her. Even though she cannot see him clearly, she thinks he looks totally like her type. She wonders if someone like that was always at the center and considers talking to him. Rose starts to speak, but the man suddenly collapses to the ground. She is shocked and calls out to see if he is okay. She realizes something is definitely off about him. Claude Dunhart is on the grass, panting heavily. Rose rushes over and begs him to stay with her. She asks if he is okay, as he continues to struggle for breath. Rose asks if he is hurt somewhere and notices he is wearing an Esper uniform. Between his tremors and rapid breathing, she realizes this is an ability rampage. This is the most serious side effect an Esper can experience. When their guiding is depleted, if no one stops him, he will burn up his life force and rampage until he dies. Rose knows that if he loses control, everything nearby will turn into a disaster zone. She knows she has to stop him, but she does not have a guide with her. The guide wing is way too far away to call for help. Rose remembers that she is a guide too, however she has been hiding her identity because of her condition. This means she cannot guide when she wants to, and she wonders if she can even perform guiding right now. Claude continues to pant heavily as he reaches out. Rose tells herself this is not the time to think, and that she just needs to do something. She places her hands on Claude's back and tries to focus her energy. She presses gently against him, trying to gather her power. Rose wonders if the guiding actually worked. Suddenly, Claude grabs her wrist and pulls her into a tight embrace. Rose tells him to wait, acknowledging that he needs guiding but feeling overwhelmed by the sudden contact. Rose asks him to calm down a bit first. Claude looks at her with glowing eyes and stammers that he needs more. Before she can react, he leans in and kisses her. Rose is completely shocked and wonders what is even happening right now. The kiss continues, and Rose thinks this is way too fast. She knows the guiding was urgent since he was on the verge of losing control, but she is still stunned by how quickly things escalated. Claude Dunhart pulls Rose Valentine into a deep kiss, catching her completely off guard. Rose struggles against him, thinking that she can't breathe and that it shouldn't be happening like this. As the intensity increases, Claude's lip begins to bleed. Rose notices the blood and realizes that things have taken a painful turn. Rose pulls away while trembling, explaining that she only meant to snap him out of his rampage. She stammers out an apology, saying she wasn't trying to hurt him. Claude touches his bleeding lip in silence, as Rose asks if he's okay and tries to see the wound. She suddenly realizes how handsome he is up close, but tells herself not to get distracted by his face. Claude tells her that he's fine and insists that she keep going with the guiding. Rose tries to stop, but she realizes he's totally blinded by the effects of the energy transfer. She asks for just a moment, but Claude grabs her hand and kisses it anyway. Rose tells him to wait, but he's clearly lost in the sensation. Rose thinks the urgent part of his condition is handled and decides she should call the director. Suddenly, Claude grips her wrist with terrifying strength. She's shocked by his power as he begs her for more, pleading with her to stay. Rose is completely confused and asks what he's talking about. Rose looks at him and realizes that instead of forcing her, he's actually asking for permission this time. She thinks he might have been too out of it earlier and finds his vulnerability kind of cute. She reaches out and gently strokes his face as he leans into her touch. Rose tells herself to stop overthinking and focus on the priority of calming him down. She agrees to guide him, but insists that they do it slowly. She tells him to be gentle and do it softly as they lean in toward each other again. Rose thinks that if possible, they should try to feel each other a bit more during the process. They share another kiss, and Rose reflects that she had no idea what she was starting back then. She suddenly gasps, wondering if she just brushed against the cut on his lip. The two continue to kiss deeply as the guiding energy flows. Rose realizes that this single kiss, meant only to stop an ability rampage, is going to shake her once peaceful life to its core. Suddenly, a voice from the distance shouts to ask who's there, breaking the moment. Rose gasps and pulls away, realizing how bad the situation is. She was so focused on him that she forgot they were outside where anyone could see them. Worried that her social reputation will be ruined forever, she tells him she's going and that the guiding should have been enough. Claude refuses to let go, holding her tightly. Rose begs him to release her, reminding him that someone will come soon to help since he's an Esper. Claude asks why he can't have just a little more, making Rose seriously worry about his state all over again. Rose shouts for him to listen and gives him one last quick kiss. She tells him that's enough and says goodbye before turning and running away as fast as she can, leaving him alone in the dark. The story explains that Espers and guides have a mechanic called compatibility. The better the match, the more effective the guiding becomes. This also leads to a much higher level of satisfaction for both parties during the guiding process. Rose finally understands what compatibility means because the guiding felt really good. She realizes she and that man must have pretty good compatibility. Everywhere their skin touched felt like clear spring water flowing, leaving her with a tingly and warm sensation. Rose thinks he must have liked the experience too, and wonders if she'll see him again. She notes that her pink hair makes her stand out, so he might even come find her once he's back to his senses. Suddenly, she bumps into Irene Magnolia and another man, letting out an ow as Irene scolds her. Irene complains about the place being packed and asks what's going on since she doesn't remember any announcements. A man explains that all guides were called in because an rank Esper lost control last night and someone apparently subdued him through guiding. Rose realizes they are talking about her and is shocked to learn the man was an rank Esper. She knows there are only 4 in the world. The man adds that the Esper had hair darker than the night, and they conclude that only one person fits that description. The man identifies the Esper as Claude. Rose is completely horrified as the realization hits her. She just realized she kissed the man known as the worst villain in the entire game. Claude is busy searching through the crowd, dismissing people as he looks for his mysterious guide. He notes that the current seat isn't the one and moves to the next. Rose watches him from afar, wondering what he's even doing there so early in the morning. Irene is annoyed that an rank Esper is grabbing busy people since morning. Rose is impressed that Irene isn't intimidated by him at all. She deeply regrets what she did yesterday, wondering how she failed to recognize the villain of this world just because it was dark. A guard approaches and tells Claude that he brought the man who discovered him on patrol that night. Rose is panicked to see the guard uncle there. Claude looks at the man and demands that he tell them everything about the guide he saw that day. The guard apologizes profusely, explaining that he could not properly see the person who was with Claude Dunhart. He says that after curfew, he felt a presence and approached, but when he arrived, only Claude was there. The mysterious person disappeared so quickly that he could not tell if it was a beast or a human. Claude asks if he really showed up, cut off the guiding, and still failed to see the guide. Claude tells the guard that this is troublesome, and warns him that if he wants to live, he had better remember something by any means necessary. Rose Valentine is hiding nearby behind a book, trembling as she realizes the situation has become the absolute worst. She knows for a fact that Claude is looking for her specifically. Claude is special even among the dirty 80s ranks. It is not just because he was the final boss of the original game, but because of his unique history and the way his powers manifested compared to the others. Among the 4 rank Espers in Arteon, 3 of them awakened recently after becoming adults. However, Claude's ability awakened when he was only 13 years old, setting him apart from the very beginning. Because of his early awakening, young Claude was sent on all kinds of dangerous missions simply for being the only 80s rank Esper at the time. Now, as an adult, he is the leader of the 90s ranks and a national hero known as Absolute Justice. Rose realizes that if someone like that is looking for her, she will get caught eventually. She remembers that even Irene, whom he only touched in the original story, was killed immediately because of his extreme mysophobia. Rose thinks to herself that she did something even worse than just touching him. Nearby, other guides are gossiping, calling the mysterious guide stupid for not knowing who she helped. They say that if she had just mentioned his hair color and outfit, the center could have found him easily. They even wonder if she was sane, since Claude was right on the verge of a rampage. Rose wonders if Claude remembers her at all. Other guides suggest he must have been hallucinating because of the rampage. Rose realizes that when someone falls into an ability rampage, sensory distortion can occur, dulling sight and hearing. Their cognition becomes so strangely altered that they might hug an elephant and think it is a squirrel. However, she knows Claude is an S rank, which makes everything more unpredictable. Rose worries that Claude might remember seeing her noticeable pink hair. As she and Irene Magnolia stand there, a gray-haired guide suddenly steps forward. To everyone's shock, she boldly claims that she is the one who guided Claude last night. The fake guide claims she was too embarrassed to let others find out and panicked, which is why she ran away. She begs Claude to forgive her and talk with her. Rose is confused why this girl is stepping up and lying in her place, then wonders if the girl actually has a crush on Claude. Rose knows that while Claude is publicly an admired figure, he is actually the type to snap someone's neck when annoyed. She thinks this lie is perfect because it ends things neatly. The guard and Rose will be safe, and this other girl gets to be the guide of an S rank, just like she wanted. In Rose's mind, everyone wins. Rose whispers to Irene that they should use this moment to slip away quickly since they are not guides anyway. Irene agrees, however. Claude just smirks and tells the fake guide that her lie is so clumsy it is not even worth answering. He turns away, leaving the girl in total shock. Rose panics as their eyes meet, wondering if there is any way he recognized her. She is horrified to see him walking straight toward her and Irene. She desperately asks herself why he is coming their way. Rose tries to hide behind her friend, urging Irene to hurry so they can leave. But Claude stops right in front of them and asks for a name. Rose desperately hopes he is calling for Irene, since she is the original heroine of the story. Irene introduces herself as a 7th grade clerk and asks why he is there. Rose is momentarily relieved, thinking he came for Irene. But Claude points directly at Rose and says he is not talking to Irene, but the one hiding behind her. Claude demands the name again, asking if he needs to repeat the same question 3 times. Rose is absolutely terrified, hiding behind Irene and crying internally as the pressure from the US rank Esper becomes overwhelming. Irene stutters out that the girl is Rose Valentine, a 7th grade civil servant who handles guide management. The story explains that everyone at the center gets a trait test before entering, and those with no abilities are hired as clerks. Rose is supposed to be just an ordinary person. Claude stares at Rose and then tells his assistant to check her. The assistant agrees immediately. Rose realizes this is a terrible situation because she has no idea what will happen if they test her. Rose steps back, worrying because she still does not know how to control her guiding. She fears that if accidental guiding happens again like last time and Claude learns the truth, she is finished. She wanted to find a matching Esper, but she never wanted to get involved with someone as dangerous as him. The assistant walks toward Rose and asks for her hand. Rose is paralyzed with fear, thinking about the original story's ending and desperately wishing she could avoid a similar fate. The assistant takes Rose's hand to begin the check. Rose closes her eyes and prays, knowing that if her identity as the mysterious guide is found out, she is completely done for. Rose Valentine is holding hands with the assistant, but she is internally panicking. She still cannot control her guiding and is terrified that it might suddenly activate right here during the test. Rose imagines the worst-case scenario where Claude Dunhart finds out she guided him and tries to kill her just for touching his body. Suddenly, the assistant calls out to Claude, snapping her back to reality. The assistant reports that he does not feel any guiding at all and confirms Rose is just an ordinary person. Claude is skeptical and asks if he is sure. The assistant explains that while physical contact usually triggers guiding, he senses nothing from her. Claude tells the assistant to keep searching and finally walks away. Rose is beyond relieved that he is leaving, but she still does not understand why he is checking ordinary people. She feels like she seriously lost 10 years of her life from the stress. Rose thinks she is safe because Claude saw with his own eyes that she was labeled an ordinary person. However, his search for the mysterious guide continues, and he keeps showing up at the center. The constant presence of the S-rank Esper starts giving Rose nightmares every night. She keeps imagining a scenario where her hand brushes against another Esper in front of Claude, causing her guiding to leak and reveal her true nature. In her dream, Claude approaches her and says he found her. He grabs her by the neck, mirroring the exact way he snapped Irene Magnolia's neck in the original story of the game. Rose wakes up gasping from the nightmare. Irene tells her she looks like she is hovering between life and death and warns her to get up before they are late. Rose remembers they have mock training today and realizes they need to hurry. Rose is exhausted and just wants to stop worrying, but as soon as she gets to the training area, she sees Claude sitting there. She cannot believe her luck and wonders why he is even here. Irene whispers that Claude is glaring at Rose really hard. Rose tries to convince herself it is just her imagination, but she is dying to know what is actually going on in his head. The mock training is meant for inexperienced Espers and guides to practice combat and recovery. Rose thinks it is ridiculous for someone as powerful as Claude to be there, comparing it to a professor joining an undergrad group project. Then, they make eye contact. Irene jokes that based on Claude's expression, you would think Rose was the one who ripped his lips apart. Rose internally admits that was actually her. The staff then announces that emergency scrolls are ready if anything dangerous happens. Rose is already planning to take vacation days or get reassigned once this training is over. A staff member approaches and introduces new guides assigned to the team. Rose is confused because they already have 2 guides. The staff member reveals that Claude has been assigned to their specific team. Rose is scared to death, her heart racing like crazy as she wonders if this is really just a coincidence. As the training begins, Claude handles every single mutant monster by himself. He does not even need help using his overwhelming power to clear the area while everyone else just watches. Some other Espers try to assist him, probably out of guilt for letting him do all the work. Claude just tells them they are in his way and to get lost, rewarding their offer with an icy glare. Rose thinks it is ridiculous to watch an S rank acting like this at a training for amateurs. Other girls are swooning over his face and rank, but Rose thinks his trash personality balances out his good looks. Popular guides Shaina and Rosane discuss how Claude is searching for the guide who stopped his rampage. They think the whole search is romantic and wonder if it could be one of the high-ranking guides. An arrogant Esper named Balin interrupts them, calling Claude defective because he never sticks close to a guide. He claims appearances do not matter and that real strength comes from inner power like his own. Shaina is not having it and threatens to report Balan for harassment if he keeps talking like that. Razna mocks him for failing to become an S rank despite his supposed inner strength, which makes Balan lose his temper. Balan mocks Shaina and Rosane, asking if he said something wrong. He points out that Claude is an S rank with a perfect face and body, implying they don't compare. He sighs and decides he shouldn't even waste his words on them. Balin gets completely enraged, asking how they dare mock an Esper. He yells that he won't let this go. Another Esper steps in and puts a hand on his shoulder, calling out to Balin to stop him from doing something stupid. The other Esper tells Balan to stop being stupid and go cool his head somewhere. Balan just grumbles in response. In this world, society is classified by power and rank, and publicly Espers are supposed to receive the highest treatment. But the reality is that guides are the first priority because they are the ones who save Espers. Normally, Espers treat them well, but Balin just awakened and is still drunk on his own power. Rose Valentine wonders why he had to stand next to her. Rose already told him to move back since this is the rear position for guides, but he won't listen. Balin asks what she's writing so seriously. She just wants to go home and sleep, but she tells him it's just her job. Balin gets annoyed when she sighs. Balan thinks even trash, like Rose is trying to ignore him now. He grabs her collar, calling her a useless ordinary human, and asking what gives her the confidence to act like that. She is confused and wonders why he's suddenly taking his frustration out on her. Balan says she has no strength or brains and asks who she thinks lets her sleep safely at night. He summons fire and says she needs proper education. Rose realizes something is seriously wrong with him and hopes someone stops him. Rose reflects on the food chain in a world full of monsters, espers, and guides. At the very bottom of that chain are the civilians, the powerless people who have no special abilities at all. Balan tells her she should be grateful to even look at his power. He asks if she's enjoying the show and calls her a pathetic non-ability user. Rose feels completely powerless as the hierarchy of their world is made painfully clear. Rose wonders what is wrong with his eyes and if anyone is going to help her. Balan unleashes his fire magic directly at her. She lets out a scream as the flames erupt right in front of her. Balan calls her a little nothing who isn't even a handful. He tells her to use this chance to remember how great an Esper really is. Rose realizes he's a madman for actually wielding his power against a civilian and panics. Rose tries to run away, but her legs give out and she can't get up. Balan tells her not to think that pretending to be pitiful will work on him. He prepares another fire attack while she closes her eyes in terror. Rose wonders what's happening when the attack stops. Balan is shocked because someone grabbed his arm. He demands to know which bastard had the nerve to grab him while he was in the middle of his education. Claude Dunhart uses his dark energy to slam Balin into the ground with massive force. Balin coughs up blood from the impact. The other trainees are terrified, wondering who could have made Balin look that pathetic so easily. Balin gasps for air, terrified to see Claude standing over him. He wonders when Claude came all the way to the rear, since he was supposed to be on the front lines confronting the golem. Claude calls Balan pathetic. He announces that the training is over and that everyone is returning. Before leaving, he glances back and tells the others to take good care of Rose. She is left completely stunned by his words. Rose sits on the ground, still processing everything. She looks at the paper she dropped and wonders if Claude actually just saved her from Balan's attack. Claude walks away without another word. Rose remembers that he suddenly started participating in this mock training and joined her specific group. She realizes he even helped her when she was being bullied in the past. Claude even gave an order for the others to look after her. So she's being carried back now. She wonders if he's actually paying attention to her. Someone notices golem dust on the ground, which is a trace of Claude's work. Rose tries to convince herself that Claude isn't interested in her. She doesn't want to end up pulverized if she gets on his bad side. She decides he was just angry at Balan for insulting him earlier and that it definitely wasn't because of her. The mock training officially ends as the confirmation is complete, and everyone is told to gather around for the return. Rose Valentine wonders about the logistics of leaving, but Balan is stumbling behind her in a daze. He is furious that they are planning to hold hands and go back happily after leaving him in such a state. He screams out, asking who said they could just leave like that. The trainees are shocked to see Balan is still active and hasn't been fully neutralized. He launches a massive magic attack, screaming that he will make sure all of them are crushed by rocks and cannot leave the cave. Claude Dunhart is right in the path of the strike, as Balan puts every ounce of his remaining strength into the blow. The cave begins to collapse under the force of the magic. Someone shouts for everyone to take cover as the ceiling gives way and heavy boulders start falling. Balan has completely lost his mind and is rampaging, screaming for everyone to die as he continues to tear the structure apart. The situation is turning into a total disaster for the group. Claude remains perfectly calm and tells Balan to be quiet and shut up. With a simple gesture of his hand, he exerts a massive pressure that pins the rampaging trainee to the ground instantly. Balan struggles against the overwhelming force, screaming for Claude to let go of him, but he is completely immobilized. Claude tells Balan to look at the chaos he caused, and notes that the boy is not coming to his senses at all. He decides that the formal punishment for this rampage will be dealt with later. With a swift strike, he knocks Balan out completely to prevent any further damage to the cave. Balan collapses onto the ground, finally silenced. Rose is stunned, realizing this is the true power of an S-rank Esper. She knew he was amazing, but she never thought it would be this much. She decides right then that she needs to try to be as inconspicuous as possible to avoid his notice. She hopes the ordeal has ended with this one incident. The ground is weakening because Balan used so much power, and the cave is about to collapse for real. Shaina asks if anyone has an escape scroll they can use. Rose asks to be put down so she can search her things and manages to find one. However, she stops in her tracks as she reads the details on the paper. Rose realizes there is a major problem. The scroll was originally meant for 9 people, but with Claude joining and an extra guide added, their group is now 12, since it is a 10-person scroll. 2 people have to leave separately. She asks if there is an Esper with a teleportation ability who can take the extras. She looks at Claude and wonders if he is capable of it. Claude just stares at her silently without answering. One of the assistants suggests that Claude can just take the office worker, referring to Rose, and leave separately. Rose is caught off guard and asks what about her opinion in all of this. The man tells her it is obvious she should go with him since she is a civilian. The assistant says their priority is to safely protect and return the guides. Another trainee tells him to just rip the scroll already and stop talking about protection. Rose watches in horror as the assistant tells everyone to stand close together and hold onto the unconscious Balan. Rose begs them not to go, but the man rips the scroll anyway. Rose breaks down in tears, screaming for them not to leave her alone with the monster. The scroll activates with a flash, and the entire group disappears, leaving her behind in the collapsing cave. She thinks they are terrible people for leaving without even looking back, even though they made sure to take Balan with them. A voice behind her repeats the word monster. Claude asks if that word just now was meant for him. Rose freezes, her face turning pale, as she realizes he heard everything. She tries to laugh it off awkwardly to save herself, but she is clearly terrified of his reaction. The 2 of them stand in silence as the dust settles around them. Rose is stiff with fear, unable to even look him in the eye after calling him a monster to his face. She remains completely frozen, wondering how she is going to get out of this situation alive. Rose stammers out a plea for him to forgive her for what she said. Claude doesn't say a word and simply turns around to walk away into the darkness of the cave. Rose hesitates for a second before chasing after him, asking what is supposed to happen to her. Claude tells her that they should go together. Rose reflects on how that day felt like a spell was cast upon them. She realizes her situation did not end with just a slip of the tongue in front of the strongest villain. She is still haunted by her own words, remembering how she screamed for the others not to leave her alone with the monster. Suddenly, the cave seems like it is about to collapse again. Startled by the rumbling, Rose lets out a scream and goes so far as to cling tightly to Claude. She is so scared of the falling rocks that she forgets her fear of the man for a brief moment. Claude looks down at her with pure rage, asking how she dares to touch his body. He demands that she release him at once and shoves her away with enough force to make her fall. Rose is shocked that he just pushed her away while the cave was nearly collapsing. Claude then looks at his own hand in confusion, wondering what is happening to him. Rose watches him immediately brush off the spot where she touched him. She thinks that even if he is a perfectionist about cleanliness, this is far too much since she did not do it on purpose. She remembers their kiss and gets indignant, thinking his rampage was only stopped because of her. She decides she cannot endure being abandoned and will make sure he takes her with him. Rose points a finger at Claude and warns him that if he leaves her there like this, he will regret it. She asks if he even knows who it was that guided him during his rampage. She tells him flat out that if he abandons her now, he will never find the way to be guided again. Claude Dunhart's eye widens in pure shock. He leans in close and asks what she just said, clearly not expecting Rose Valentine to claim she knows the identity of his mysterious guide. Claude asks if she is just inventing words to get attention. He warns that if she is lying, he will personally make sure she regrets it. He demands she speak the truth. Rose realizes her anger made her slip up, but she decides she has to roll with it now. Back at the center, Irene Magnolia is screaming at the assistants for leaving Rose behind. One man stammers that it could not be helped, but Irene calls it an absurd excuse. Suddenly, Claude enters carrying Rose, and Irene shouts her name in relief. Rose calls out to Irene as she is set down. Irene rushes over, horrified by the state of her face, and says she looks terribly disfigured. Despite the chaos and injuries, the mission technically ended in a victory. Claude tells Irene to stop wasting time and orders Rose to speak. Irene tries to protect her, saying Rose is injured and they should talk later. Claude refuses, and Rose tells Irene it is okay because she has a promise to keep. Rose starts her description, asking if he only needs info about that guide. She says the person had short hair that looked either brown or black. She adds that the figure was quite tall as well. Rose thinks she is being clever by describing the exact opposite of herself to keep her identity hidden. She feels like she is killing two birds with one stone. However, Claude asks if that is really all she knows. He coldly orders his men to seize her. Two men grab Rose, who asks what they are doing. Claude explains that he cannot trust mere words alone. The assistant wonders what he means by that as Claude orders them to take her away. From that day on, Claude inflicts a severe punishment on Rose. He brings in the 213th guide, a person with a shoulder-length brown bob who is 165 centimeters tall. Rose is dazed, but Claude tells her to focus. After hours of poring over documents, Rose tells him she does not think it is this person either. As punishment, every guide with a different description is dragged in, and she is forced to identify them all directly. Rose says the last person was the final guide who even came close to the conditions. Claude suggests it might be an ordinary civilian. The assistant points out that everyone in the center undergoes genetic testing, so the odds are low. Claude snaps that low is not non-existent and orders inspections for everyone. Rose stands up and begs him to wait, asking if he knows how many days she has been checking guides. She asks to go back, but Claude says she should have watched better. Rose thinks he is an insolent bastard and argues she did not even know it was him. Claude tells her she has a tendency to act without restraint and says this time he will make certain of things. Rose screams that she will help and asks if that is not enough. She thinks he is a heartless creature. Suddenly, a voice calls out to Claude. A man named Oscar enters the room. He asks what kind of business brings Claude there, looking quite relaxed compared to the tension in the room. Oscar mentions rumors that Claude has finally lost it and says he had to see what was tormenting him. Rose wonders who this Oscar guy is. Oscar notices her and says this is not the scene he expected, calling her a charming young lady. Rose is stunned by how blindingly handsome Oscar is. She thinks he must be a key figure from the novel, but cannot remember his role. Oscar touches her hair and asks if she is a new Esper, saying he has never seen such lovely pink hair. Rose finally remembers he is Oscar, a Class A guide who was incredibly popular in the original story. Oscar asks Claude if he was hiding away with this cutie. Claude tells him to get lost. Oscar says Claude is always difficult and decides to ask her himself. Oscar introduces himself and asks for her name. Rose thinks he seems much kinder than Claude. She tells him her name is Rose, and Oscar says even her name is cute. Oscar thanks her for the introduction. Rose remembers when Claude first asked her name. He just called her "you there" and demanded her name. The contrast makes her feel even more awkward. Rose remembers how she could not even answer Claude properly and just stuttered her own name. She thinks it was ridiculous. Oscar laughs at the situation, while Claude sternly calls out Oscar's name. Claude Dunhart reveals that Rose Valentine is just a civilian, and Oscar's charming act vanishes instantly. He complains that he just wasted his time and asks why a civilian is even there. Rose is stunned by how suddenly his demeanor changed. Oscar mocks Claude, asking if non-ability users are his type now, and suggesting that is why he never appointed a dedicated guide. Claude tells Oscar not to be ridiculous, explaining he only kept Rose there to identify the person who guided him. Oscar insults her, saying she looks too plain to be standing next to Claude. Rose is furious, taking back everything she thought about him being nice. She realizes he is just a brown-haired monster, but then she notices his hair and has a sudden realization. Rose jumps up and shouts to Claude that she just remembered who his guide is. Oscar is completely blindsided, letting out a confused shout. Claude tells her not to be absurd, but Rose is insistent that she finally has the answer he has been searching for. Claude asks if she is messing with him, but Rose tells him he heard her right. She confidently declares that the person who guided him that day was definitely Oscar. She points out that he matches the description perfectly, especially with his short brown hair. Rose points out Oscar's tall stature and says he matches the description of the person she saw exactly. Oscar panics, asking Claude what on earth she is talking about and denying he ever guided him. Claude loses his patience, telling Oscar to shut up and get out before physically shoving him away. Claude does not hesitate to use force, his gloved hand reaching out to dismiss Oscar from the room entirely. He has clearly reached his limit with the interruption and the confusing accusations Rose is throwing around. Claude clutches his head in frustration, and Rose thinks it serves him right to have a headache. He starts muttering that it absolutely cannot be true. Rose wonders what he is whispering about and asks him to speak up because she cannot hear him. Claude mutters that those lips were far too moist, soft, and sweet to ever belong to Oscar. Rose is totally weirded out, thinking she never expected to hear a detailed review of her own lips like this. She tells him that if he really does not believe her, there's a simple way to check. Rose suggests that Claude should try kissing Oscar himself to verify the truth. Since she claims to have found the person he was looking for, she announces she is leaving and bolts out of the room. Waking up the next morning after successfully screwing Claude over feels like being born again. Rose is sleeping peacefully until Irene Magnolia starts shaking her awake. Irene is frantic, telling her to get up because she was missing all day yesterday. Rose wakes up in a daze, thinking Irene looks like an angel. But Irene is just annoyed that Rose is being so calm about the situation. Irene asks if she is still being blackmailed and suggests reporting Claude. Rose knows she was used as a human radar, but realizes her own lies were the real problem. She tells Irene everything is fine now and thinks Claude probably hates her face anyway. An assistant then hands her a document to handle. Rose is happy to be back to her normal routine, even finding the scent of fabric softener fragrant. Irene asks if she really resolved things, but Rose just enjoys the nagging. When an assistant announces they will finish after lunch, Rose is thrilled to find out they are having steak, which makes her heart flutter. Rose walks along happily until someone suddenly calls her name. She realizes she had forgotten just how terrifyingly persistent an Esper can be when they are searching for their guide. She stops and turns around, offering a nervous apology before she even sees who it is. Rose freezes as she recognizes the voice calling her name. It is Claude, and she wonders why he is here again. He stands there with his arms crossed, looking incredibly upset, and Rose immediately starts worrying about what has gone wrong this time. Claude asks how she dared to play games with him. Rose is horrified, wondering if he actually tried kissing Oscar to check her story. She is shocked because she thought his misophobia meant he hated touching people, making her wonder if he actually went through with it. Claude stares at her with an intense, terrifying gaze. He tells her he is certain it was not Oscar, and demands that she stop playing around and tell him the truth. Rose is shaking, thinking to herself that she is absolutely dead meat now that her lie has been exposed. Rose is still stuck on the idea of Claude kissing Oscar, wondering how he could do it despite his misophobia. Claude confirms that it definitely was not him, but he trails off with a troubled look, suggesting that the experience was far worse than he expected. Claude tells her to stop joking and reveal the truth. Rose is terrified, wondering if he actually tested her claim for real. She stammers that she already told him everything she knows, but Claude's intense pressure makes her feel like her time is up. Rose thinks there is no way this germophobic villain would kiss someone that easily and suspects he is just trying to bait her. She asks if he really tried it, saying it is unfair to accuse her otherwise. Claude tells her to be quiet, saying he knows by instinct it was not him. Rose notices he looks terrified. Rose suddenly remembers a crucial detail from the original novel. Claude does not just have misophobia, he suffers from a severe guiding allergy. If someone incompatible tries to guide him, it feels like being stabbed with needles. That is why he avoids all physical contact and wears clothes that cover his entire body. Rose Valentine realizes Claude Dunhart definitely won't touch Oscar because of the side effects, so she decides to use that to escape this mess. She tells him that if he really doesn't believe her, they should make a bet. If it turns out Oscar isn't his guide, she'll accept whatever punishment he wants. Rose adds that if she wins, Claude must stop coming to find her entirely, so she can finally say goodbye to him forever. Meanwhile, in the hallway, Oscar is talking with some other guides when someone calls out to him, but he insists it is his turn first today. Oscar hears someone calling his name and stops in his tracks, looking back over his shoulder with a confused expression. Rose approaches and introduces herself as the civilian who was with Claude last time, claiming she is there because he asked her to bring him. Oscar is surprised since the 80s. Rank rarely asks for him first, but Rose smiles and says something just came up and it will only take a moment. Oscar decides he should go check it out and starts walking with Rose. He asks what exactly her relationship with Claude is, but she quickly stammers that there is no relationship and they are definitely not like that. Oscar is skeptical, noting he has never seen Claude hanging around a woman before, and jokes that the guy must really like tiny girls. Rose becomes visibly annoyed and snaps that while she is short, she isn't that short, but Oscar just laughs and tells her sure. Rose is frustrated by how much Oscar's attitude changed once he learned she was a civilian. She asks if he gets told he's oblivious a lot, and he admits people say that often, but claims they just don't understand him. Rose thinks he is actually the only one who doesn't understand. They arrive at the door, and Rose announces they are here. Oscar wonders where Claude is just as the man steps forward and calls his name. Oscar assumes something big must have happened for Claude to call for him first. Claude suddenly grabs Oscar by the shoulders, making him ask what is wrong. Rose tells them to talk comfortably since she brought him, but she wonders why they are standing so close and if she is really supposed to watch from there. Claude insists his life depends on this and asks if Oscar remembers their deal. Rose is confused about the deal, while Oscar asks if he was dragged into a weird bet with the tiny girl over there. Oscar calls her Bean Girl, which makes Rose wish she could see if he is still laughing in 5 minutes. Claude tells Oscar to stop and specifically orders him not to call her Bean Girl. Rose wonders why Claude is suddenly acting like this. Oscar finds the whole situation strange and says he is getting goosebumps, asking if he can leave now. Claude tells him no because he called him here for something else. Oscar points out that Claude usually hates physical contact, but then Claude suddenly grabs his shirt and pulls him forward forcefully. Claude leans in close to Oscar's face, making Rose wonder if he is actually going to go through with it. Oscar panics and yells for him to wait, asking why he is doing this and if he ate something weird. Oscar begs Claude not to come closer, while Rose thinks he should have lived a nicer life. Oscar reminds him that he only guides female espers, but Claude braces himself and attempts to guide with him anyway. Oscar screams for Claude to move his lips away as he resists strongly. In the end, Claude can't even hold his hand, failing to prove Oscar wasn't his guide. Oscar is just relieved he wasn't kissed. Claude clenches his hand in disgust, while Rose tells him that since he couldn't do it, she wins the bet. Rose tells Claude he had better keep his promise. With her victory, he truly stopped coming to find her, and she thinks her exhausting fate has finally ended. Later, she is working in a medication storage room. Her senior in the pharmacy department, Azir, apologizes for the sudden request to learn so many drugs and procedures. Rose says it is fine since being dispatched to understaffed departments is part of their support work, and Azir promises to send her back quickly once they finish. Rose asks about a specific door and Azir explains it is a VIP-only room. He tells her she is lucky because a very important person is there today and asks if she wants to take a look, which makes Rose wonder if she is even allowed. Rose Valentine looks through the open door and sees Claude Dunhart lying in a hospital bed with an IV drip. She asks her senior why he is there and realizes this is the first time she has ever seen him in such a weakened state. Azir asks if Claude has been bothering her lately and suggests getting revenge while he is asleep. Rose thinks she could slap him right now and he wouldn't know, but she warns Azir to be careful. Azir explains Claude is sedated with sleeping pills because the guiding drug shot feels disgusting. Azir mentions they administered a high dose of sleeping pills so Claude won't wake up easily. Rose asks about the guiding drug, remembering that it is only a temporary measure with minimal effect on an S-class. Azir agrees, calling him a monster-level individual, but says they have no choice since he refuses to be guided by a person. Rose realizes the drug only temporarily prevents a rampage. She thinks about how if he does not continue to receive guiding, his power will eventually explode someday. Looking at the situation, she thinks the world seems quite fair, which makes her question what she just thought. Rose reflects on how Claude was born with everything everyone would envy. He is rich, handsome, and even awakened as a powerful S-class. Rose finds it ironic that he might die because of his power. She admits the ruckus he caused trying to find a guide was annoying, but now she understands it was a matter of survival. Azir apologizes for saying this in front of her since she was dragged around, but Rose says it is okay. Rose thinks about how Claude always only showed an arrogant and rough side, so she never knew he harbored such concerns. To her, he was just the mastermind who blew up half the center during a rampage and caused the deaths of Irene, Magnolia, and the other male leads. Until now, all she has done is think of ways to escape him and survive. But she realizes that if he was just as desperate to live as she is, she cannot hate him like she did before. Rose approaches the bed and thinks about how sorry she is for running away recklessly and using her illness as an excuse to avoid him. She admits she cannot stay by his side because she lacks the ability to help him. She gently touches his forehead, hoping he feels a little better when he wakes up. Suddenly, guiding happens. Rose is shocked and wonders why it triggered just from a touch. Azir asks what is wrong, and she quickly lies, saying she dropped her papers because of static electricity. Azir mentions it has been dry lately, and Rose makes an excuse about something urgent to leave immediately. Rose bows and apologizes, telling Azir she will come back later. He is confused that she is leaving so suddenly. She runs out of the room as fast as she can, leaving her senior standing there wondering what just happened. As she rushes down the hallway, Rose is consumed by thoughts of why the guiding suddenly happened. She cannot understand why her guiding, which never worked normally before, only triggers when she is in front of Claude. Suddenly, someone shouts for Rose to watch out. She turns around in surprise, caught off guard while she was lost in her own thoughts. Rose bumps directly into Claude, who is already out of bed. She is stunned to see him awake and wonders if her accidental guiding is what actually woke him up from his sedated sleep. Claude grabs her wrist firmly. He says her name and tells her that he knew it was her all along. Rose is frozen as her heart begins to race. Claude demands an answer, asking if she is the guide he has been looking for. Rose struggles in his grip, terrified that if guiding happens now, her identity will be completely exposed. She panics, wondering what she should do to escape this dead end. Both of them realize that the guiding did not happen this time. Claude thinks it is impossible and asks what trick she has been using since their last encounter. He is convinced it is her because there is no one else it could be, while Rose realizes she does not know why it failed either. Rose thinks to herself that she cannot control the guiding as she pleases. It only happened by chance before, and there is no guarantee it will happen again. She notes that there is still absolutely no response from her powers as he holds her. Rose tells him that she already said she is not a guide and suggests he go find an official one. She tells him not to be ridiculous because the same trick won't work twice. She manages to pull her arm away from his grip and starts walking away. Claude follows her and pins her against the wall. He points out she was the only witness to his first guiding and was nearby today when it happened again. He asks if she is really claiming this is just a coincidence. Rose stammers, but Claude says he does not need to hear an explanation. Claude Dunhart reminds Rose Valentine that she was the one who suggested a kiss to be absolutely sure. He leans in close, telling her to check just like last time. Rose realizes she won't be able to run away from him this time. Claude repeats her own words back to her, saying that if she really wants to know for sure whether someone is a guide, she should check with a kiss. Rose is caught off guard, wondering when he managed to get so close to her. Rose tries to tell him to wait a moment, but Claude tells her to stop chattering and focus only on him. He leans in to kiss her, determined that he won't miss the guiding sensation this time around. The kiss with Claude is just as persistent as the one they shared back in the forest. He pulls her a little closer, and Rose finds the kiss to be soft to an unnecessary degree as they stay locked together. The kiss continues to the point that Rose's mind starts to go hazy. She begins to panic, wondering what will happen if he finds out she is the guide because of this. She admits she is scared, but thinks she might have been lucky. In the end, the guiding doesn't trigger at all. Claude pulls away and simply says he sees how it is. Rose wipes her mouth, thinking that after checking this much, he has finally given up. She tells herself she should be happy since this is what she wanted. Despite getting what she wanted, Rose wonders why she feels a lingering sense of disappointment. Claude tells her that, as she said, it seems she isn't his guide. He then asks if she saw anyone else enter the room while he was out. Rose knows Claude won't stop suspecting her if she doesn't give him something, even though it is unpleasant. She decides she has to lie again to avoid him. She hesitates for a moment before telling him that yes, someone else was there. Rose makes up a story about bumping into someone rushing out while she was heading toward his room. She describes the person as having short brown hair, matching the features she mentioned before. Claude thanks her for telling him and turns to leave. Claude walks away, leaving Rose alone in the hallway. She looks down at the floor, telling herself that it is finally over. However, she can't help but feel a hollow sensation that makes her efforts seem pointless. Later, Azir mentions that Claude called for him again. He tells Rose she has had it rough catching the ES, ranks I. Rose is annoyed because Claude promised to stop bothering her if she won the bet. Azir says a low-level clerk has no power and heads off. Azir tells Rose not to worry because he explained the door was already open that day. Rose is touched that her senior was thinking of her and thanks him. As she walks down the hall, she wonders why Claude is calling for her today. Rose is tired of having to lie every time they meet. She stops walking, her hand going to her lips as the memory of Claude's kiss suddenly comes to mind. She quickly tries to shake off the useless thoughts and reaches for the door. Rose opens the door and greets Claude, only to find another woman with short brown hair standing in the room. She is surprised to see someone else is with him. Claude looks up and tells her to stop standing there and come in. Rose enters the room nervously, realizing things are going completely differently than she expected. She can't take her eyes off the person standing next to Claude, wondering who she could be. Rose realizes the woman is Shaina McQueen, the only A-rank guide besides Oscar. She is shocked because Shaina looks exactly like the fake guide she described in her lie. She panics, wondering if all her lies are about to be exposed. Claude asks why she is just standing there and tells her to come in. Rose walks forward, terrified that things are going wrong. Shaina glares sharply at her, and Rose wonders if something happened to make the guide so angry. Rose nervously asks why she was called. Claude asks if there needs to be more than one reason, mentioning she passed by the injection room that day. He asks her to confirm if Shaina is the guide she claimed to have seen entering the room. Rose is stuck because Shaina is right there. She stammers that the height and hair color are similar, but the hairstyle seems different. Claude demands a clear yes or no answer. Shaina interrupts, asking Claude if he is questioning the wrong person. Claude is surprised by the interruption. Shaina steps forward and tells him that he should be asking her directly instead of bothering the clerk. Rose is impressed that Shaina is lecturing Claude to his face, thinking the A-rank guide is no joke. Claude Dunhart smirks and sits back in his chair. He tells Shaina McQueen that it is fine and decides that he will be the one to ask the questions. Now Shaina stands before him, looking down as the tension in the room shifts. Claude looks directly at Shaina and asks the big question. He wants to know if she was truly the one who guided him on that fateful day when he went on a rampage. Shaina just smiles and asks who knows, questioning if she even has an obligation to answer him. She leans in close and tells him that if he wants the answer he is looking for, even a lord like him will have to put in some actual effort. Shaina keeps up her confident act, but Rose Valentine is trembling in the background. She thinks to herself that she has definitely been caught by someone absolutely terrifying and wonders how she will get out of this mess. Rose is at a cafe, stirring her drink while feeling completely drained. She reflects on how every office worker probably wants to quit on their very first day. She lets out a heavy sigh, wondering why she feels so exhausted already. It turns out Rose has been dragged along on Claude and Shaina's dates for days now. She remembers the first day was a walk in the park. The second was an amusement park, then sightseeing at the beach, and now they are stuck on a cafe date. Rose wonders why they cannot just hold hands once to check if the guiding even works. She watches Shaina brag about what Claude said to her. Rose notices Claude talking perfectly fine with Shaina and assumes he must actually like her quite a bit. Rose cannot understand why Claude is so different with her compared to Shaina. She remembers him glaring, grabbing her arm and threatening her constantly. She bitterly thinks that maybe a pretty face was all it took to cure his supposed germophobia. Rose feels like someone is watching her and gasps when she realizes Claude's attendants are right there. She had completely forgotten about them, but then she remembers they are actually the main male leads from the game, including Daniel Rivendell, an S-rank Esper. Wilhelm Rivner, another S-rank Esper, is also standing there, and Rose realizes these are her old online crushes from her past life. She wonders why people of their rank are stuck working as simple attendants for Claude instead of leading their own teams. Rose finally works up the nerve to ask why they became Claude's attendants. Wilhelm just smiles brightly and says, "It is because Claude is handsome." He adds that even men have to admit that the guy looks incredibly cool. Daniel adds that Claude is basically a living legend and that fighting alongside him filled them with reverence. Wilhelm agrees, saying that as an Esper, Claude's abilities are incredible and worthy of respect. Rose is left completely speechless by their fanboying. Rose realizes that these powerful Espers are just huge fans of Claude. While she thinks he is a ruthless psycho, she wonders if this is what men consider a dream role model. Wilhelm confirms they enjoy following him simply because they admire him. Wilhelm notices Rose looks tired and asks if she is okay. She admits it is killing her, so he offers to buy her a snack with the activity budget. Rose is shocked to learn there is a budget for these dates and immediately asks for cake. Wilhelm says of course it is covered since it counts as work, and he tells her to go choose one. Rose is thrilled because she really needed some sugar. She stares at the massive display of pastries, thinking they all look amazing. Rose happily digs into her cake and says it literally melts in her mouth. Wilhelm watches her with a smile and asks if it is really that good. Rose enthusiastically confirms that it is totally delicious. Rose offers some of her cake to the guys, telling them they should try it too. Daniel and Wilhelm are surprised by the love attack, but Daniel says they will try some if she insists. Claude just watches the whole exchange in silence. Rose is in her own world, enjoying the sweets, while Claude continues to watch her with a blank expression. Shaina tries to get his attention back, starting to tell him a story about something that happened at that time. Claude ignores Shaina and tells Rose that he cannot concentrate because of all the noise she is making. Rose is confused and asks if he means her. Claude tells her she looks pretty free and orders her to bring him some napkins. Claude tells Rose not to make him say it twice. She quickly grabs the napkins and promises to get them right away. She fumes internally, wondering why he is perfectly normal with everyone else, but treats only her like this. Rose Valentine hands over the napkins, but Shaina McQueen is being difficult and immediately demands water too. Rose is clearly fuming internally as she brings the mug. But then Shaina has the nerve to ask for a spoon as well. Rose slams the spoons down and tells Shaina, here they are. She has had enough of being treated like a servant and tells them that since they do not seem to need anything else, she is going to head out. As Rose walks away, she thinks to herself that the whole situation is seriously unbelievable. Meanwhile, Shaina tries to get Claude Dunhart's attention, calling out his name twice to snap him out of whatever trance he is in while watching Rose leave. Claude finally looks at Shaina and asks what they were even talking about, clearly having tuned her out. Shaina sighs in frustration but tries to pivot back to the food. Nearby, Rose is in her own world, thinking the strawberry and cream combo of her cake is absolutely amazing. Rose tells Claude he should try the cake because it is really good. He actually thanks her, which pushes Shaina over the edge. She suddenly stands up and slams her hands on the table, shouting his name to demand his full attention. Shaina asks Claude if he wasn't here to see her today. She points out that he barely focuses on her as it is, so she wants to know why he is only looking at Rose. Claude just sighs and tells her that if she has something to say, she should just say it. Shaina realizes that today just isn't the day to get through to him and decides she will leave first. She turns and storms away from the table while Rose watches her go, sensing the massive amount of tension left behind. Rose wonders why Shaina is walking toward her instead of the exit. She thought they were having a great date, so she is completely confused when the A-rank guide suddenly stops right next to her while she is still eating. Shaina stops and glares fiercely at Rose, radiating pure malice. Rose is totally caught off guard, wondering what on earth is going on and why this woman is suddenly glaring at her like she wants her dead. Some time passes after Shaina stormed out that day. Rose is back at her desk at the center when she hears the distinct sound of heels clicking toward her. She immediately gets a bad feeling, hoping it isn't who she thinks it is. It turns out Shaina has started visiting Rose every single day. She brings a barrage of malicious complaints with her, asking if Rose has handled the tripping hazards or the poor noise insulation she mentioned last time. She is clearly just looking for excuses to torment her. Rose tries to explain that she can't fix everything immediately because she needs to verify the issues first. Shaina just yells at her, asking if she knows how long ago she requested those changes. A male coworker tries to step in and help, noting that Rose is still new. Shaina shuts him down immediately, saying she specifically wants Rose to handle it. The coworker can only back off awkwardly. Rose realizes that while she was oblivious and just eating cake that day, Shaina clearly considers it a crime. Rose is absolutely exhausted, between Claude calling her out for dates whenever he feels like it, and Shaina tormenting her with complaints at work. She feels like her weekends and her peace of mind are just public property. Rose considers reporting both of them to the center. But then she imagines Claude using his powers and asking if she really dares to report him. She decides her survival comes first. Then, Claude's voice snaps her back, telling her she is late. Rose greets them nervously, hating that she has to see this pairing again. Claude looks at her and tells her the festival is crowded, so she needs to make sure she follows them closely so she doesn't get lost. As they walk through the festival grounds, Rose looks around and notices something is missing. She works up the nerve to ask Claude if his attendants, Daniel and Wilhelm, aren't coming along with them today like they usually do. Claude gives Rose a chillingly serious look and tells her that from now on, the attendants won't be coming anymore. Rose flinches at his cold tone, wondering if she accidentally asked the wrong question and made him angry. Rose feels incredibly alone without Wilhelm, whom she nicknamed Log Number 1 because he was actually kind to her. She wonders if she can survive the day in one piece. Shaina tries to reach out and touch Claude's arm, but he sharply tells her to keep her distance. Rose realizes that Shaina is no exception to Claude's strict no-touching rule. She wonders what the point of them going on dates even is if he acts like that. However, she notices he doesn't look at Shaina with pure disgust like he did with her or Oscar, so she thinks he might actually be making an effort. In a world where mutants threaten humanity, Rose Valentine is a guide who has been trying to stay under the radar. She is currently at a festival with the powerful S-rank Esper Claude Dunhart. As they walk through the market, Rose realizes she is absolutely starving after all that walking. Claude notices her holding her stomach and immediately holds out a food skewer, simply telling her to take it. Rose is shocked and asks if he is really giving the food to her. Claude just looks at her and asks if she does not want it. She quickly takes it, laughing as she thanks him and says she will definitely enjoy it. Meanwhile, Shaina, an A-rank guide, watches them from the crowd, clearly not happy about being ignored. Rose is feeling pretty drowsy after eating everything, thinking about how Claude just kept buying her food even after those skewers. She admits everything was incredibly tasty, and she enjoyed the festival, but something is still on her mind. Rose thinks her legs are actually killing her after walking around all day. Claude tells her the fireworks are about to start and says they should hurry. Rose stumbles in her exhaustion, but Claude is right there to catch her before she hits the ground. Fireworks start exploding in the night sky as Claude holds Rose in his arms. She can only think about how unexpected this whole situation is while they stand there together under the lights. Claude looks down at her and admits he cannot take his eyes off her for even a single second. Rose looks back up at him, her heart racing as she wonders what is going on with him. Rose lets out a small gasp as she pushes away, but Claude is not done and suddenly grabs her arm again. She thinks about how troublesome this is becoming and calls out to him in surprise. Claude pulls her into a tight hug right there in the middle of the crowded street. He tells her to just remain there for a short while before she goes anywhere else. Claude looks at the crowd and wonders what could possibly be appealing about a place like this. Rose finds the whole posture pretty awkward and remembers how he reacted when Shaina tried to touch him just a moment ago. Rose wonders if he is truly fine with being this close to her when he was so cold to the other guide. It feels unsettling to her. And then she suddenly remembers that Shaina is still supposed to be his actual date. Rose tells him to wait and asks where Shaina is, pointing out that they were supposed to be on a date together. She asks if he really just abandoned the other girl to come find her instead. Claude just turns away and says he does not know, claiming Shaina probably just went off on her own. Rose is pretty annoyed, thinking about how she wasted her precious weekend just to have things turn out like this. Claude just looks at her and asks what she is complaining about. Claude tells her that if she has something to say, she needs to speak up properly. Rose gets flustered and says it was nothing important, but she realizes they have suddenly gotten far too close again. Rose freezes as she realizes that a guiding transfer just took place between them. She starts panicking, wondering what she should do if Claude noticed it. He just asks how long she intends to stay like that and tells her to finish what she was saying. This is a title card for the chapter. It seems Claude did not realize what happened after all. The next day, Rose is back at work and feeling completely exhausted. She never imagined guiding would happen so suddenly and is just glad he did not seem to notice the transfer. Rose is still troubled because Claude stared at her for a long time after the guiding, even though he eventually acted like nothing happened. He even escorted her all the way back to the dormitory, which is something he never would have done before. He even flashed a strange smile before leaving, and Rose could only tell him to take care on his way back. Rose thinks there are way too many suspicious things going on. Suddenly, a male assistant walks up and tells her she has been given a temporary assignment to a new department starting today. Rose is blindsided and asks where she is being sent. The assistant reveals she is being moved to the Esper Support Division. Rose cannot believe she is being sent there, of all places. She sighs and starts packing her belongings into a box to prepare for the move. Rose grumbles about how heavy her box is as she walks toward her new office. She thinks about how difficult it is to work at the organization lately. Just as she arrives, Claude walks out of a door, and she nervously asks if that is his office. Claude Dunhart tells Rose Valentine to enter. She steps in and is immediately impressed, thinking what a fine room it is. He doesn't waste any time and points out her new desk, telling her to see to it herself. Rose agrees and starts settling in, but she realizes she is going to be working way closer to Claude than she ever expected. She nervously asks if she is his exclusive clerk, and he confirms it. When she asks who she should get the handover from, things get awkward. Claude just stares at her in total silence, which is definitely not the answer she was looking for. He finally tells her to just rest until some actual work comes up. He even mentions he does not eat what is in the refrigerator, so she can help herself to whatever she wants. Rose is confused if she is really just meant to rest, but she decides to take it easy. By the end of the workday, she has truly done nothing at all. Well, nothing except raiding the snack cupboard. The desserts are incredible, and Rose wonders how the fridge was filled with exactly the things she was craving. She decides that if this peaceful life continues, being Claude's secretary might actually be a dream job. Suddenly, Claude is right there calling her name to wake her up. He tells her that is enough, and she needs to get up. Rose is mortified that he caught her dozing off and worries he is going to scold her, but he just tells her to put on her coat and come with him. Rose follows him out, wondering why he is doing this so suddenly when there are only 10 minutes left in the day. She figures she cannot refuse, since she spent the whole day eating. They arrive at a massive, elegant restaurant, and she is stunned because she has never been to a place this fine before. She assumes this must be another date with Shaina McQueen and feels a bit disappointed. As they reach the entrance, a waiter welcomes Claude and offers to guide them inside. Rose follows him in, wondering what the food tastes like in a place like this, and if he is actually going to treat her to a meal as well. Claude takes a seat at a table, but Rose just stands there looking at the empty chair across from him, feeling completely out of place. Claude looks up and asks why she is sitting over there. Rose is confused because she thought that seat was obviously meant for Shaina. Claude tells her not to concern herself with that and orders her to sit directly across from him. Rose is still spiraling, wondering why he is sitting there and why he wants her in front of him. Claude just taps the table impatiently. She points to herself and asks if he really wants her to sit in that specific spot. Claude glares at her and says it sounds like she does not want to. Rose immediately panics, waving her hands and shouting no, while admitting she is just scared. The waiter hands Rose the menu and asks what she would like to have today. She takes one look at the options and is immediately distracted by the thought of delicious food. Rose is so excited she wants to eat everything on the list. She completely forgets Claude is even there while her eyes sparkle at the menu. The waiter patiently asks what she would like to order. Rose starts sweating because she is having a really hard time choosing just one thing. She stammers that she needs just a moment. Claude has seen enough. He takes the menu and simply tells the waiter to bring everything on it. Rose is absolutely floored by the move. Rose Valentine covers her mouth in shock. She can't believe he did something she only dreamed of so easily. She decides she will prepare to eat with utmost sincerity. A little later, a massive feast of food and desserts is displayed on the table. Rose lets out a shout of excitement as she sees all the dishes, unable to contain her joy. Rose is excited as she sees the food. She thinks that even though Claude Dunhart is a mastermind, he might actually have some kindness. She decides to eat as much as she can while she has the chance. Rose turns to Claude and wonders if this meal was actually meant for Shaina. She gathers her courage and tells him that she has a question she wants to ask. Claude eats a cherry and tells her to go ahead and ask. Rose nervously asks him to please not get angry after he hears her question, clearly fearing his reaction. Rose asks why he isn't eating with Shaina today. Claude just stops what he is doing and remains silent for a moment, leaving her waiting for an answer in the quiet restaurant. Claude declares that the woman means nothing to him now. Rose is completely caught off guard by his coldness and asks what he means by such a blunt statement. Rose asks if he didn't think Shaina was his guide. Claude simply states that she is not that woman, making it clear that his search is far from over. Rose is visibly nervous as she turns to him. She asks how he could possibly know for sure that Shaina isn't his guide, wondering what proof he could have. Claude meets her gaze with a serious expression. He simply tells her that he just knows, offering no further explanation and leaving her to wonder how he could be so certain. Rose pauses while eating. She remembers that espers can sense a well-matched guide by feeling. She wonders if he realized she was the one who guided him and worries about what will happen to her now. Rose turns to him and asks if he perhaps found his real guide yet. She waits for his response, hoping for a clear answer that might explain his sudden change in attitude. Claude says he hasn't found his guide yet. He explains that he wanted to find one before going into the operation, but unfortunately, he was unable to do so despite his efforts. Rose turns to him and asks what this operation is and where exactly he is planning to go. She is clearly worried about the danger he is putting himself in. Claude explains that he is going to stop a gate that is about to burst. He mentions that he will be going alone since he is going without a guide. Claude explains that if he happens to rampage during that specific operation, it will be very difficult for him to return safely. He is fully aware that this mission could be his last. Rose is completely shocked by the revelation. She turns to him with a stunned expression, unable to believe that he would risk his life so recklessly. Rose tells him that if it is that dangerous, he should just say he won't go. Claude explains that this is something that will inevitably happen someday to an esper who cannot receive guiding. He adds that delaying it will only aggravate the pain. Claude Dunhart looks down, accepting his fate in front of Rose Valentine. He says that if this is something that is going to happen anyway, it would be best to find a place where the damage from his rampage can be minimized as much as possible. Rose grips her knife tightly as she processes the horror of an esper's end. She knows that if one dies from a rampage, they explode with energy much stronger than the power they produce during their life, burning everything around them in the process. The visual of the explosion is overwhelming. Rose thinks to herself that the death of an unguided rank esper is like the death of a star, a catastrophic release of power that leaves nothing but destruction in its wake. Claude sits in silence with his arms crossed, his gaze fixed on nothing in particular. He seems to have completely accepted the necessity of his sacrifice, appearing more like a tragic hero than the villain Rose remembers from the game. One question continues to haunt her as she sits in the quiet restaurant. She wonders why Claude suddenly decided to buy her dinner today, searching for the hidden motive behind a gesture that now feels like a goodbye. Rose looks down at the empty plates on the table, the remnants of their expensive meal. She wonders if this whole evening was meant to be like a last supper for him, a final moment of normalcy before the end. Claude explains that since he has tormented her all this time, she could call this dinner a final gift for that. He speaks with a blunt honesty that makes his upcoming death feel even more real and unavoidable to her. Rose looks completely distressed, her heart aching as she looks at him. She can feel the sincerity in his words, and the realization that he is truly planning to die alone makes her chest tighten with an unexpected grief. Later that night, Rose stands by the window of her room and looks out at the dark city, letting out a small gasp. She is still trying to process the fact that the absolute justice she knew is preparing for a solitary death. Rose holds a paper bag with a baguette, feeling a strange conflict within her. She wonders if Claude is really a bad guy, remembering that in the game he was the final mastermind who killed everyone. But things feel different now. She realizes that his villainous turn in the game was only because he rampaged from not receiving guiding. She notes that in this world, he hasn't actually killed anyone yet, making her question everything she thought she knew. As she takes off her shoes, Rose reflects on his recent actions. She thinks about how today he actually said he was sorry, took her side, and showed her genuine consideration, which is nothing like the villain she expected. Rose Valentine is torn apart by a heavy choice, wondering if it is truly right to let Claude Dunhart die after everything that has happened. The thought of guiding him crosses her mind, but she immediately worries that if she does, he might ask for a marking. Rose feels the anxiety of the situation sinking in, thinking that the prospect of a marking is just too scary for her to handle. She realizes she cannot make this decision on her own and needs outside perspective. Rose calls out to Eileen, trying to get her attention by telling her there is something she needs to talk about. She is hoping her friend will listen to her dilemma despite the late hour. Irene Magnolia bluntly states that she is sleeping, leaving Rose to wonder if her friend is really going to ignore her when she clearly needs to talk. Rose begs Eileen for help, explaining that she has a serious problem and needs the judgment of someone rational to help her just this one time. Rose continues to beg with everything she has, repeating her plea for help over and over as she desperately hopes Eileen will listen to her. Irene is completely annoyed that her sleep has been interrupted by the girl who will not stop pestering her with requests for help. Irene tells her to just go ahead and speak, prompting Rose to thank her and start her story about a supposed friend to keep her own identity hidden. Irene looks on with a deadpan expression and remarks on how predictable the whole setup is, clearly seeing right through the friend story. Rose asks if there's a guy who is incredibly handsome but happens to have a really bad reputation, trying to set the stage for her story. Rose explains that her friend avoided the man at first, but after spending time with him, she started to think he was not as scary as she believed, and actually seemed kind. Rose says her friend thinks she might be able to help the guy, but Irene cuts her off to point out that Claude is clearly scheming against her. Irene asks if the truth is simply that she is wavering, which leaves Rose completely caught off guard and unable to do anything but let out a shocked exclamation. Irene sits up and tells her not to even try denying it, since everyone already knows Claude has been taking her around lately, making her cover story pointless. Irene pokes Rose on the nose and calls her by her name, telling her straight up not to be so naive about the man she is dealing with. Irene asks if she really thinks someone who has ruled over others their whole life would know about consideration or caring, warning that Claude is trying to sweet-talk her and is too much for someone as gullible as Rose to handle. Irene tells Rose that she needs to start living in reality and stop chasing vain dreams before she gets hurt by the situation. The next morning arrives and Rose reflects on the conversation, admitting to herself that Eileen definitely had a point as the weight of the warning stays with her. Rose Valentine leans forward at her desk, hands clasped as she reflects on the warnings she just received. She realizes that while Eileen has a point, she is also a very critical person, which might be skewing her perspective on the whole situation. She decides that she should also listen to the opinion of a positive person. She needs a different outlook on her secret dilemma before she makes any final decisions about how to handle Claude. Suddenly, someone knocks and steps through the doorway. A voice calls out, asking if Rose is there, interrupting her deep thoughts about the situation. Rose stands up at her wooden desk and looks toward the door. She thinks to herself that he is finally here, and tells the visitor to come in. Senior Azir walks in, wearing his white lab coat and glasses. He gives a friendly chuckle and waves his hand in greeting, and Rose is relieved to see him. She looks at him and realizes he is the positive person who will actually listen to her story. The title card for Rose Don't Want to Be the Guide of a Clean Freak Villain appears as she prepares to seek his advice.